The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim. Watchmen. Watchmen. Inherent Vice. Inherent Vice. Hail Caesar. Hail Caesar. Alien Resurrection. Alien Resurrection. Transcendence. Based on his work as Christopher Nolan's go-to cinematographer, audiences naturally expected sharp visuals from Wally Pfister's feature directorial debut. He shot everything from Memento to The Dark Knight Rises, winning an Oscar for Inception along the way. And indeed, Transcendence is no slouch on the visual front, bringing a largely monochromatic sleekness and a pleasingly high-tech symmetry. No matter how pleasing it may be to watch nanobots swarm around a desert town or dewdrops hanging just so on leaves, the story is as inert as Johnny Depp's performance playing Will Castle, a super genius whose consciousness is uploaded into an increasingly dangerous AI program. The rest of the overqualified cast does the heavy lifting, but they practically break their backs in the process. The Cell. Film critic Roger Ebert F** seeking love this movie. That's right, the guy who hated Blue Velvet and Raising Arizona thought that The Cell was one of the best films of 2000. To be clear, this is the same year that films like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, High Fidelity, and Battle Royale were released. If you haven't seen The Cell, it stars Jennifer Lopez playing a child psychologist who goes into the mind of a comatose serial killer in order to find the location of his final victim. The film plays out as a cat and mouse game that is a straight-up mess from top to bottom. The movie is really cool to watch if you like playing Spot the Visual Reference. Director Tarsem Singh definitely knows how to create an interesting visual aesthetic, but by the end of the film, you start to feel like he threw everything he could think of at a wall in hopes that something would stick. Or The Cell was the WTF trip into the mind of a serial killer horror fans didn't know they needed. 95 of 234 the best psychological thrillers of all time, 407 of 675 the best movies. Roger Ebert gave 4 stars. Tron Legacy. Looking back on Tron Legacy, it seems as though the collective world accidentally willed the film into being. Everyone loved the kitsch factor of the original so much that they didn't stop to think about what a sequel might actually entail. It turns out that audiences were treated to some truly neat visuals, but no real story to speak of. Tron Legacy is a retread of the original film haphazardly redone with a new, kind of confusing plot. Even though the top-notch visuals perfectly fit Daft Punk's original score, nothing else about the feature feels like it needs to happen. The movie probably should have been a ride at Disneyland, or a very long music video. More Tron Legacy 15 Wreck-It Ralph fan theories that might bring the internet 803 of 1540, the most rewatchable movies 160 of 557, the greatest film scores of all time. Australia. As Luhrmann catches a lot of heat for being a director who cares more about style than substance. With pretty much all his films, You either get swept away by the spectacle, as was the case with Romeo plus Juliet and Moulin Rouge, or leave angry about spending to see an over-the-top explosion of color. The one film that no one seemed to care about was 2009's Australia. Even the film's star, Nicole Kidman, claimed that she was embarrassed to be in the movie. In fact, she actually left the country of Australia immediately after the film's premiere just so she wouldn't have to read any reviews. While it's not clear whether Nicole Kidman has about of digital news outlets, what is apparent is that there's nothing of merit in this film beyond the gorgeous shots of the Australian countryside. More Australia 563 of 836, the greatest chick flicks ever made 389 of 553. The greatest epic movies ever made 7 of 41, the best movies set in Australia. The Neon Demon. Admittedly, Nicholas Winding Refn wasn't trying to create the perfect narrative when he made The Neon Demon. The film is more about the evocative nature of visuals and the way that the concept of celebrity is a precipitous black hole, so the plot ends up taking the back seat. Everything and everyone in this film feels like a set piece, which is interesting on an aesthetic level, but doesn't make for a fun night at the movies. All the production work, the cinematography, the score, the design is beautifully done, but the final product is a bit of a dud. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Writer director Luc Besson's 1997 adventure, The Fifth Element, set a high-water mark for distinctly sci-fi weirdness, packing every frame with colorful designs inspired by 60s and 70s European comic books. So when Besson returned to the genre 2 decades later to adapt the beloved French comic Valerian et Laureline, fans expected him to once again bring the trippy, ambitious oddness. And he didn't disappoint, from the opening montage showing the International Space Station evolving into a hub for innumerable alien species to a shape-shifting Rihanna to dizzying action sequences dense with ludicrous detail. Unfortunately, most moviegoers agreed the visuals are the only reason to see Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. As spacefaring secret agents Valerian and Laureline, Dave DeHaan and Cara Delevingne are miscast enough to leave a black hole of charisma where the lead performances should be, and no amount of cosmic action can compensate for the lack of investment in these two characters. The story, meanwhile, is an excuse for spectacle, leaving little to no impression. More 110 of 186 the best alien movies ever made, 172 of 177. The greatest comic book movies of all time, 129 of 172. The best science fiction action movies. Speed Racer. Speed Racer is a visual delight. Seriously, watching this movie is like tasting candy for the first time. It provides a sensory overload that you'll never forget, but it's chock full of empty calories. At the end of the day, you'll be no better off for having watched Speed Racer. It'll just be another thing you did. Admittedly, the Wachowski brothers' cinematic attempt to set your brain on fire has its champions, but almost all the film's praise involves how good it looks. This pro-Speed Racer position requires a lot of dancing around the fact that everything but the visuals were poorly executed. More Speed Racer 22 of 22 trippy movies that'll make you feel like you're in an altered state. 652 of 723 the greatest action movies of all time. 35 of 57 the best car racing movies that really put the pedal to the metal. The Spirit. The Spirit is nuts. It's one of those movies that makes you wonder about the people who actually enjoy it. Does anyone even like this movie? Surely the film's director, Frank Miller, must enjoy the film because it feels like he was given free rein over its creation. The dialogue is abysmal, the characters are paper thin, and the story only makes sense to guys with the Boondock Saints tattoos. Despite all this, the spirit is visually fascinating. The rotoscoping in the film manages to make the visuals feel like they were pulled directly from a comic book, which is furthered by Miller's knowledge of comic book illustration. This movie should be held up as an example of what's capable with good lighting and a green screen. Just don't pretend that it's worth anything more than that. Sucker Punch. The best and worst thing you can say about Sucker Punch is that the director of photography Larry Fong managed to make the film look just like a video game. The visuals are a stellar technological achievement, but once you move beyond Zack Snyder's green screen world, there's nothing really there. This tiring dirge of a film is about a group of women in a mental institution who are transported to a fantasy world where they take on the roles of sex workers, fighter jet pilots, and samurai warriors. It's billed as a roller coaster of fun, but in reality, it just feels empty. As one reviewer put it, watching Sucker Punch feels like watching somebody hog a video game. Sure, it looks kind of cool, but if you can't ever grab the controller and get invested in the avatars bouncing all over the screen, it's just boring and pointless after a few minutes. More Sucker Punch 50 of 97 The best movies to watch on Mushrooms 332 of 541. The greatest guilty pleasure movies 65 of 128. The most confusing movies ever made. Jupiter Ascending. In varying degrees, every Wachowski movie is astoundingly stupid, yet also visually entertaining and sort of fun. Of all their films, Jupiter Ascending may be the Wachowskis' greatest achievement in dumb, gorgeous filmmaking. Really, it's almost impossible to explain the plot of this movie without sounding like a crazy person. Regardless of how out there the story is, the spaceships are exceptionally fun to watch. If you're a fan of sleek, sci-fi aesthetics, you should watch it with friends on a Friday night and not worry about missing all of the dialogue. Or Jupiter Ascending 150 of 172, the best science fiction action movies 4 of 15 movies with great ideas ruined by terrible execution 18 of 20 bad action movies that are actually good.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care. Bye.